Well, in California, more churches may be opening their doors soon. The state has released a framework that will permit counties to allow in-person worship services. This after President Trump on Friday pushed governors hard to reopen houses of worship, calling them essential. The California guidelines include limiting worshipers to 100 people or 25% of building capacity, whichever is lower, taking everyone's temperature, limiting singing, and no sharing of items like prayer books or collection plates. Reactions have been mixed.
We reserve the right ourselves to determine the things that we should do that would be in the interest of our people.
3,000 confirmed cases in our zip code. East Oakland has been hit hard by this pandemic, and so therefore I stand in support of not opening our church doors at this time. It's not safe.
I'm gonna have people thinking, okay, but you were teaching me for a long time that we have a God that heals, but now you send me home because I'm sick.
A church and its pastor in Chula Vista, California, is suing Governor Newsom over his stay-at-home orders. And we are joined now by attorney Paul Jonah with the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund and Thomas More Society. He represents the church, South Bay Pentecostal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Heather. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, you have filed a civil rights lawsuit over the governor's stay-at-home orders and how they affect churches. What are your thoughts now on this new framework for churches that the state has released? Is this good news for churches?
Well, certainly it's a step in the right direction, but the new guidelines are still arbitrary and unconstitutional in our view. They place limits and capacity caps on houses of worship that we don't see being placed on other industries, other organizations. I mean, for example, factories, offices have no capacity caps. So, churches that could hold 1,000 people or more being arbitrarily limited to 100 congregants. I mean, those are the sorts of arbitrary assessments that circuit courts have already found to be unconstitutional. Our cases in the Ninth Circuit where the judges came out the other way. So there's a circuit split, which is why we're hopeful the Supreme Court will immediately weigh in. We're asking for relief before Pentecost Sunday, which is this coming Sunday. So
right. I know there's a lot of churches that are hoping this Sunday to open their doors. And as you mentioned, you are appealing to the Supreme Court right now. What is your hope? What are you hoping that the Supreme Court will decide here?
So our hope is that the Supreme Court will give us an immediate injunction. And the reason we're asking for that is that there's currently a circuit split. Two circuit courts, the Ninth Circuit and the Seventh Circuit, have come out against churches on this issue. And two circuit courts, the Fifth Circuit and the Sixth Circuit, have come out the other way. And they're basically applying the Constitution inconsistently. We need immediate guidance. These are fundamental constitutional rights, and they're being eroded by these executive orders that governors are issuing without regard to the Constitution. So we're hoping the Supreme Court will step in and put in give some much needed guidance to the country as soon as possible.
It sounds like the church that you represent and other churches in California right now are really at the mercy of the counties and being able to work out agreements with the counties. Is that how you understand it?
Right. So Governor Newsom's most recent guidelines, they do basically leave the counties with the sole authority to adopt these guidelines. And so that's another problem as well. There's no indication yet that San Diego County is even willing to adopt them. So as we speak, churches are still closed, whereas factories and all sorts of other industries and organizations are allowed to reopen. So it's not right. It needs to be corrected. We're working with the Thomas More Society, and we're aggressively pursuing this, and we believe it's a matter of utmost importance and needs to be addressed by the Supreme Court immediately.
All right, and just briefly, the church that you represent, do you think they'll open their doors this Sunday?
They are hoping for that. They're hoping and praying, and I know that Bishop Hodges he's been speaking out against what's been going on, and certainly his plan for now is to get relief from the courts. And he's looking for guidance from the Supreme Court, and hopefully he gets that before Pentecost Sunday.
All right. Well, Paul Jonah with the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, thank you so much for your time and what you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you.